And we're live. Welcome back or welcome to the Truth Comes to Light podcast, where everything done in the dark is going to come to light. Every single detail in this world that is done in the dark is going to come to light. I'm your host, Jay Coven, and welcome to the show. For those of y'all that are new, on the Truth Comes to Light podcast, we talk about news from all over the world, the music industry, and more. Please be sure to check out my previous podcast episodes on the channel. Also, please be sure to tune in to Real Spill Wednesdays. On Real Spill Wednesdays, we talk about life topics and motivational quotes. Please, if you're interested, please be sure to tune in to Real Spill Wednesdays. I got a new Real Spill Wednesday coming out for y'all this week, so please be sure to tune into Real Spill Wednesdays. Also, follow me on IG, TikTok, and X at the Truth Comes to Life podcast, because who knows, whatever I post on one of those social media platforms is basically like a foreshadow on what the next podcast episode is going to be about. But if you're not following one of those social media platforms, you will not know that. And plus, what I'm going to start doing, I'm going to start getting y'all engaged, getting y'all more involved. I'm going to start asking y'all, what should my next podcast topics, what should my next, Real Spill Wednesday be about? And I want y'all to engage, and I want y'all to have, y'all input on what it should be about. And if certain topics don't make it to the podcast episode, I want y'all to have y'all opinion on those topics that I do decide to post on one of those social media platforms. I'm going to get more consistent on the social media platforms. I'm getting there. But I promise you, I will be getting on those social media platforms, and I will be engaging with y'all. I was sort of kind of doing it last night, but I'm going to be more consistent with posting on those social media platforms. Please sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, turn on post notifications so you get the latest updates on when I post a Real Spill Wednesday or a full podcast episode. And yeah, with that in mind, let's get straight into this podcast episode. We're not going to waste no time. As y'all can see on the shirt, SEC runs deep. And under this shirt, I want y'all to see that. Roll Tide. I said it. Roll Tide. So we're going to get straight into college football. I want to talk about each and every one of those games. Yes, I know the college football rankings have came out, which we will be talking about later in the show. But I want to talk about all of these games that have transpired for the teams that had a chance on making it to the college football playoffs. And what did I tell y'all in the last podcast episode? That was my first time even talking about sports on the podcast episode, and y'all loved it, by the way. But I told y'all that it can turn upside down for any one of these teams, and it can be chaos. Any one of these teams can cause chaos to the other team. And sure enough, on Saturday, that is exactly what happened. So we're going to get straight into it with Alabama. Alabama just causing chaos, beating the number one team in the nation, the Georgia Bulldogs, 27-24, keeping their playoff chances alive and making a case for the college football playoffs, which we will be getting into later in the show. Jalen Milroe, 13-23, 192 yards, 2 touchdowns, 14 carries for 29 yards. Roydell Williams also had 16 carries for 64 yards and a touchdown. Jam Miller had 9 carries for 23 yards, but he also had a 28-yard receiving touchdown. Isaiah Bond was the leading receiver on Alabama with 5 receptions for 79 yards, and Jermaine Burton had a crucial touchdown at the end of the first half. 2 catches, 28 yards, and 1 TD. Carson Beck had a pretty okay game, 21 of 29 for 243 yards, rushed for a TD. And Kendall Melton, the running back, 13 carries, 42 yards, 2 TDs. Dejon Edwards also had 10 carries with 38 yards. But Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey, even though they were banged up coming into this game, they didn't really do nothing. Alabama's defense did a very good job on shutting down Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey. Brock Bowers had 5 receptions for 53 yards and 3 receptions for 38 yards. And Arian Smith had that one deep play down the field, which went for 51 yards. And that was sort of kind of the momentum that Georgia kind of needed, but they just fell short. What I'm going to tell y'all about this game, and I told y'all Alabama could be the team that can cause chaos for this college football playoffs. I literally told y'all. And what did I tell y'all about Jalen Milroe? In order for Jalen Milroe to make that step to being one of the better great quarterbacks that Alabama has had in the past previous years, Jalen Milroe has to come and play against these big-time teams, has to come and play against your Georgias, your LSUs if they're good, your Ole Miss if they're good. He has to throw the football. If this was the if this was the Jalen Milroe that we saw in week 2 against Texas, that we saw against week 3 against South Florida, it would not have looked good if they played Georgia in the SEC championship. But Jalen Milroe has gotten better week in and week out. He has proven to be the best quarterback that Alabama has had. And when it matters most, that play against Auburn, yes, it was desperation. It was a prayer, but he got it done. And when you came into Georgia, when you came into Atlanta to beat Georgia, he made key throws. And I want y'all to see both of these throws. Both of these throws was right before halftime. I really want y'all to see this. These are the type of throws, like I said in the last podcast, these are the type of throws that Jalen Milroe has to make in order to be that next good Alabama quarterback. So as you see, it's a 4th down and 4. Yes, this was a controversial catch. This was a controversial catch. Now looking back, people say that it was a catch. People saying that's not a catch. I'm an Alabama fan, so I'm gonna be biased. I'm gonna be biased. But Jalen Milroe put this ball in the right spot for Isaiah Bond to go and catch the ball. And then the next play after this, he finds Jermaine Burton for the touchdown. But I want y'all to see both of these throws. These are both great throws by Jalen Milroe.
Down at 4. They will go for it. Blitz on the way. Milroe lobs it far side. Bond, did he get it?
Right on 4th down and 4. And what Georgia was doing, Georgia was trying their best. They were blitzing Jalen Milroe. They got a couple of sacks on Jalen Milroe. And not only were they doing that, they were spying him to try and get Jalen Milroe to be contained in the pocket. There were times like later in the game where it was designed quarterback runs that Jalen Milroe was able to use his legs to get to the 1st down marker, which played key into winning this game as well. But the throws that he had to make to keep Alabama on top, Alabama, for the most part, controlled this game. Georgia had that early touchdown to make it 7-0, but after that, Alabama was mainly up by 10 points, so they were controlling the game. I wouldn't say that they dominated the game, but they most definitely controlled the game. They controlled the tempo of the game, and Georgia has never really had to play catch-up like that, and it was never really down really the whole season. So this is the other throw right after this. Exactly one play later.
Milroe scans the field to the end zone.
2 plays later, I'm sorry.
Milroe scans the field to the end zone. And it's caught. Jermaine Burton.
Right over the middle, back part of the end zone where only Jermaine Burton can catch the ball. That is a great throw by Jalen Milroe. Those are the type of throws that Jalen Milroe had to make, and he made those type of throws. Yes, there were times where he was just literally just looking, and there's going to be times when you're a young quarterback like Jalen Milroe. If I'm not mistaken, Jalen Milroe is a sophomore, where he's just looking at this one receiver. He's holding the ball. But once Jalen Milroe learns how to read coverages like a Tua, like a Joe Burrow, like a Bryce Young, once he's able to read coverages instead of being like a Jalen Hurts, and you're just looking, and then someone is literally wide open just standing there, and then you finally throw it to him, he's going to be a very dynamic quarterback. He's already a dynamic quarterback with his legs, but once he's able to read coverages, he will be that dude, because there were plenty of times. There was times where he threw it to Isaiah Bond on 3rd downs and on 4th down where he was already open. There was a play where it was like a drag route, and Isaiah Bond was already open coming across the middle of the field. But he's looking to the left. He's looking to the left. He's looking to the left. He doesn't even see Isaiah Bond come and be wide open. And then he finally sees it, and then he throws it to him. That's the same thing that we saw with Jalen Hurts. If it wasn't for Ridley, if Ridley wasn't open, he's looking for Ridley. There might be someone else right there open, and then he finally throws it to him. It's the same way. They play the exact same way. But Jalen Milroe has proved this season that he has gotten better, and ever since he got benched week in and week out, he has played better against these teams that you need to beat, your LSUs, your Ole Miss, your Tennessees. When Tennessee, they came into Tuscaloosa and they were actually beating them coming into halftime. But coming out of halftime, Jalen Milroe and the Alabama Crimson Tide, they picked it up and they got the W. It's resilience. So then when you play what the committee thinks is the number one team, people are saying you don't have no shot against Georgia, and they come in and they controlled the game. They controlled how Georgia played on offense with shutting down Brock Bowers. That was the goal. Even though he was injured, it doesn't matter. Shutting down Brock Bowers, once you shut him down, and then Ladd McConkey obviously got injured in that game, had a bad ankle, you could clearly see. But once Brock Bowers was gone and the running game wasn't as good, they cleaned up on the running game. That was another thing that Alabama did. They cleaned up on the running game. Georgia didn't really rush the ball as well as Auburn did the week before, so they cleaned up on that. And then the cornerbacks with Arnold, and then you have Caleb Downs as safety coming in. He's doing good. All of these cornerbacks and safeties were covering, and they were doing their job. Story was doing his job as well. Textbook coverage. Didn't really have no flags the whole entire game. It was probably like 2 or 3. It wasn't that many flags this game. Alabama played a clean game, and Alabama really showed everybody that they can beat Georgia. That clearly showed that Georgia wasn't the best team all along. And we know this with Alabama. We know Alabama really is that one team that causes problems for Georgia. Georgia was the number one ranked team, has won 29 straight, back-to-back champions. And Alabama, they were the last team to beat them. They come in with a group of guys, and to be honest with you, this is a low year for Alabama. This is, I wouldn't say a rebuild year, but these are not the high caliber wide receivers and other skilled players that Nick Saban has had in the past. But they still come in. They still come into this SEC championship with a chip on their shoulder from what everybody is talking about them. And they come and they beat Georgia. That's a statement win. And it wasn't in dominating fashion, but they controlled the game. They controlled the game from start to finish. Other than that touchdown, like I said earlier, they controlled the game. Controlled the game from start to finish. So you have to just look at Alabama differently, even though they lost to Texas at the beginning. And you can just see that they're a different team. That was a different team against USF. Way different team. So Alabama, Jalen Milroe has done it. Jalen Milroe is that dude. This shows that Jalen Milroe is that dude. He can get you over the hump. He can get you over the hump, and he's going to continue to get better from his sophomore season to his junior season. And if he does stay for his senior season, he is going to get better because he's going to learn how to read coverages better. Like I said, these are the type of throws. He made some great throws. He made some great decisions in the shut out the game, to close the game out. Once Georgia had came and drove all the way down the field and scored the touchdown to make it a 3-point game, Jalen Milroe comes, runs the ball on first down, gets the first down. Runs it again and gets the first down. He put Alabama on his back. He showed Nick Saban that this is his team. He showed Nick Saban that this was his team, and it was great. It was a great way to beat Georgia when nobody thought that Alabama could beat Georgia. especially with the up and down year that they were having and how dominant Georgia was just beating these teams. Alabama just came and said, "No, we heard what they said. We heard what all these people were talking bad about us, what they were saying, and we're going to prove to not only the people that are talking about us, but the committee that we can go up against the best teams in the nation." And they went up against Georgia, and they beat Georgia. Now, obviously, what I will say, because yes, I was rooting for Alabama, but I did think if Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey were healthy and were 100% ready to go and they gave it their all, especially Brock Bowers gave it his all. He was playing on one wheel, but he gave it his all. Maybe this game will be a little bit different. It will be harder to guard Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey, but they got injured, so you can't really say too much about that. That's just what happened. That's the reality of the situation. And yes, it's unfortunate for Georgia. It's unfortunate losing after winning 29 straight, having the season that they've been having, back-to-back championships, thinking that they're going to go back. It's very heartbreaking. I would be very heartbroken if I was a Georgia Bulldog. But Alabama came in, played good on defense for the most part. But outside of that first drive where it felt as though they were just going up and down the field on Alabama. But other than that, they did good on defense, controlled the tempo of the game. Georgia had to play catch up, and they were not used to playing catch up, so they just lost the game. It was a very good game. In my opinion, I feel like this was the best game of all the championship games, which we will be talking about all the championship games. So let's move on to the game that happened on Friday, the day before the SEC championship. We're going to talk about the Pac-12 championship. And how about the Pac-12? Man, the Pac-12 is going to be missed. The Pac-12 is going to be missed forever. All of these teams, all the West Coast teams just playing, and all the memories is all just going to be eviscerated, going to be gone. Like, that's just very hard to think about. It was first the Pac-10, now it was the Pac-12, and now it's gone. And if y'all saw the picture of all the mascots were at the game that were in Las Vegas, all the mascots were at the game to basically celebrate like this is the last Pac-12 game ever. Like, that really brought a tear to my eye. But for it to be the last Pac-12 game, it was most definitely interesting. So, Washington, and I had Oregon beating Washington. So, that's kind of crazy because the simple fact, Oregon was like a 9-point favorite to win the game, 10-point favorite. And Washington beats them a second time this season, 34-31, to win the Pac-12 championship in the conference last game. Michael Penix Jr. had a phenomenal game. Bo Nix had a phenomenal game. Michael Penix Jr. was 27 of 39 for 319 yards, 1 TD, 1 interception. Dylan Johnson had a phenomenal game. He had a touchdown, a 5-yard touchdown, 5-yard throwing touchdown. He also had 28 carries for 152 yards and 2 TDs on the ground. Washington, he alone ran for 5.4 yards a carry. It felt like Oregon just couldn't stop this dude. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. Jalen McMillan was the leading receiver, 9 receptions, 131 yards. Rome Odunze, 8 receptions, 102 yards. Jalen Polk had 5 receptions for 57 yards, and Jeremy Bernard had the last touchdown for Washington, the 5-yard touchdown. Bo Nix had 21 of 34 for 239 yards, 3 TDs, 1 INT. He also had 6 carries for 69 yards and that big rush down the sideline to get him in the red zone, ultimately causing a touchdown to happen. Jordan James had 5 carries for 35 yards and 1 TD. Tez Johnson was the leading receiver with 5 receptions for 68 yards. Trayshawn Holden had that huge reception, 1 catch, 63 yards, and a touchdown. Terrence Ferguson had 4 receptions for 17 yards and 2 TDs, including 1 to end the first half. Now, like I said, Oregon just couldn't stop the run. Oregon really lost in two spots for me. Well, three, to be honest with you. Oregon lost because it was 20-10 at halftime. You cannot score 10 points in the first half. You just can't score 10 points in the first half. Two, they couldn't stop Dylan Johnson. They couldn't stop him. You cannot allow 5.4 yards a carry and expect to win the football game. You cannot expect Oregon to win the football game if they're allowing over 5 yards a carry. They were running it down their throat. And that last drive that Washington had, they got the ball with like 9 minutes or something like that, and they drove it up and they drove it down the field. They ran it down Oregon's throat for the touchdown. Now, obviously, Oregon had got the ball with like 2 minutes left and got that huge touchdown. And then Washington comes, and the crazy thing was Oregon stopped them. It was like a third and long. I know it was a third and long. I think it was like a 3rd and 19 or something crazy like that. They just gave it to Dylan Johnson, and they just let him work. And he wasn't 100%. And they ended up getting the first down. That was number 2. That's how they lost. And number 3 is sort of kind of unfortunate because if we look at the play, it was at the beginning of the fourth quarter. You can make as Oregon fans, you can make a argument that this was a fumble. And I wouldn't even disagree with you. It's very close. It's very close.
I mean, I get it. You say it's close. I mean, I think if
that's why you make the big bucks, Billy. What do you got for us?
He touches the ball. The ball moves before Penix throws it. So you can make the argument, Oregon fans, and I wouldn't blame you, that Michael Penix fumbled the ball before he ended up throwing it, and that should have been a fumble. I feel like the ref should have let that play out. I feel like with any type of fumbles, not being down, because that's what happened in the Alabama game. It felt like Jalen Milroe wasn't down in one part of the game where they called a sack, but he wasn't. Ended up, in my opinion, he was barely down. But I feel like they should have let that play. Same with this. I feel as though Oregon in the Washington game, they should have let this fumble just play out because you always have instant replay. That's my thing with these refs. I feel like they should let all interceptions, all fumbles, all not down or down, whatever you want to call it, they should let those type of plays play out because there's so many times, there's so many occasions where a ball is caught and it's fumbled, but they call it an incomplete and come to find out that, it is a fumble or someone ain't step out or someone was down. You always have instant replay. That's the beauty of having instant replay. For plays like this, you can let it play out, and then you can always just come back and just erase what just happened. Versus if you just say that he's down right there and come to find out he wasn't down and he could have went for a touchdown, you can't even reverse the call. That's my main problem with refs in regards to that. They should let each and every play out. Don't blow the whistle until you 100% know. If you don't know, just let it play out because you can always come back. So for these Oregon fans and the Michael Penix, in my opinion, he fumbled the ball. And this was important because after they said that Washington has possession, it was an incomplete pass, they went and scored a touchdown. So if you don't say that wasn't a fumble, I mean, it's close, but I feel as though that it's a fumble. And it propelled them to win because they ended up winning by 3. But you got to give credit, Washington. Penix looked pretty good. Dylan Johnson looked good. All the wide receivers, they all looked good. That's one thing with Washington. They have deep wide receiver cores, which we will talk about later, but they have a real good wide receiver core. They're deep from top to bottom, and they looked good. Oregon also had another chance. Penix threw an interception, and Oregon comes back, and Bo Nix throws an interception like the next play. I'm like, come on. I don't know how, but they had chances to get in the game. There was a point in time where Oregon was winning, but they lost it, in my opinion, in 3 spots. They lost it with the 10 points in the first half. They lost it on, obviously, this play with the fumble. And then, obviously, Washington just ran the ball down their throats. Ran the ball down their throats, up and down the field, up and down the field, up and down the field. Ran the ball down their throats. Both teams were getting basically pretty much what they wanted. They could get what they wanted. But I just feel as though with Oregon, you can't expect to win a football game allowing over 5 yards. Over 5 yards a carry. You can't expect them to win. You can't expect them to win the big time football games. The teams can run the ball down your throat, because that'll allow play action passes, and you can do a multitude of things if you're able to run the ball down the field to get the other team off balance. Now, since you got them off balance, you can do whatever you want, and that's what Michael Penix was Jr. That's what Michael Penix was doing. So he was throwing the ball good. He looked very accurate. Dylan Johnson was running the ball good. Rome Odunze was getting open. Jalen McMillan was getting open. The last couple of plays that were getting open. Very good routes. Very good offensive play calling too. The bunch formation was very good on converting on third down conversions for the Huskies. That was very good play calling on the offensive side of the ball. So Washington makes a statement in this win that they should be that lock in the playoffs, and undefeated Pac-12 champion. You gotta give it to them, and they beat the same team who's been at number 5, number 6, number 7 twice, and they were underdogs. It wasn't just like a 2 to 3 point underdogs. Nah, they were a whole 9 point underdogs, basically a two possession underdog. And they still came out. They were resilient. They were down in the game. They came back, and they won the game. So Oregon lost in those 3 spots, and I feel very sorry for Oregon. I feel sorry for Bo Nix. Even though he went to Auburn, I still feel sorry for him, because he had a chance. He had a chance. They should have beat him the first time. I feel like the first time they had more opportunities to beat him, especially in the red zone. But this time they did have an opportunity too. They just couldn't allow Dylan Johnson to go off for 5.4 yards a carry. You just can't do that. So like I said, congratulations for Washington. That was the only team that I did say was going to lose, but they ended up winning. So got to give Michael Penix credit. He is obviously in the Heisman conversation, one of the finalists. He might mess around and win Heisman. I personally believed that if Bo Nix won, he could have won the Heisman. If Michael Penix wins, now it opens up Jaden Daniels, but he can still win depending on how good he does play. But who knows? Who knows is going to win the Heisman? I personally have Jaden Daniels winning the Heisman. I want y'all to give y'all opinion on who do y'all believe is going to win the Heisman this year. But very good game, very entertaining game, very good game to start off the championship. All the championships. It was very good. Now let's talk about Texas. We're gonna talk, like I said, we're gonna talk about all of these championships for 1 through 8. Texas was looking very dominant. Beating Oklahoma State 49-21. Quinn Ewers had over 450 yards, 452 yards to be exact. 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. He was 35 of 46. Now, mind you, Quinn Ewers had like 350 yards in the first half. Had 350 yards in the first half. Oklahoma State, they just didn't come ready. They wasn't ready for a team like Texas. They just wasn't. Keelan Robinson, 4 carries, 75 yards, 2 touchdowns. C.J. Baxter also had a touchdown on 13 carries for 43 yards. Jaden Blue, 10 carries, 33 yards. Adonai Mitchell, the transfer from Oregon, was the leading receiver in yards with 6 receptions for 109 yards and 1 TD. Jatavian Sanders also had a TD with 8 receptions, 105 yards and a TD. Xavier Worthy, which is very interesting. I got to see what his injury report is going to be, because he did get injured in that game, and that'll be very, very, very interesting. He had 6 receptions for 86 yards. Jaden Blue also had 3 receptions for 38 yards and a TD. And how about the big man? How about defensive tackle Tavondre Sweat with 1 reception, 2 yards, and a TD? How about that? I know that's one of the best feelings in all of college football for linemen. Just getting the ball and scoring a touchdown. Literally getting the ball on a reception. It could be a run, but them doing all the dirty work and being rewarded for a touchdown, that is a good sight to see in college football. That was a very good sight to see. Let's talk about Oklahoma State's quarterback, Alan Bowman, 22 of 38 for 250 yards. He had 3 touchdowns. He had 1 INT. Ollie Gordon, 13 carries, 34 yards. Brennan Presley was the leading receiver with 9 receptions for 93 yards and 1 TD. And Rashad Owens had 4 receptions for 85 yards and 2 TDs. Texas just dominated. Yes, it was 49-21, but Texas dominated the whole way. This game didn't even look close. Texas for sure looks like one of the best teams in the nation. In my personal opinion, if we want to talk about the best team, this is my hot take. I personally believe that Texas is the best team in the nation. I personally believe that without a doubt, that Texas is the best team in the nation. Texas is better than Michigan, better than Washington, better than Oregon, Alabama, Georgia. I feel like they're better than all of those teams. Texas was looking great. Texas was cooking on offense. Texas was cooking on defense. Texas was cooking everywhere. Quinn Ewers was 30 yards away from beating Sam Bradford in the most amount of passing yards in the first half. That was crazy. And they were just getting whatever they want. Outside of the INT, Quinn Ewers played perfect. He played a perfect game, and it was just a good sight to see for Texas. Texas was just the potential that they had ever since they signed Steve Sarkisian was just already up there through the roof, and Texas just did their job. Texas just did what they were supposed to do in the Big Ten, beating all of these teams and winning the Big Ten championship. This was a statement. This was domination. This was pure domination. Pure domination. Like I said, Oklahoma State didn't necessarily play bad, but they have never ran into a team like Texas. So Texas coming in and they just put up all the points. They destroyed them. They lit it up on both sides of the ball. And Texas is playing with this is a pretty young team too. Texas is playing with a pretty young team. This is not your all the way experienced teams on each and every positions. It's not that. Texas is playing with some young talent like Xavier Weather. He's not like a senior or nothing. He's on the younger end. So they got CJ Baxter, for an example, the running back. He's a freshman. They got guys. They have talent. These Texas teams have talent. You do not want to see Texas. Texas have talent, and when they get the experience and be in certain situations, they will be a problem for years to come. It's not just a 1-year thing of Texas is just dominating. No, next year, I feel like they'll be even better, especially if Quinn Ewers comes. If Quinn Ewers is still there, yes, Quinn Ewers is going to rally those troops, and they are going to be good. They are going to be good for years to come. So you want to watch out for Texas. This is not just a 1-year thing. Texas will be here for years to come, not only with Quinn Ewers, but with Steve Sarkisian as the head coach. He can draw up some offensive plays. I really love the offensive plays that he was calling this game with getting the ball towards the perimeter, running the football too. He didn't go away from the run like it was fluent. Everything was fluent. Everybody got a chance. Everybody got a touch from Quinn Ewers. Everybody got a reception. So this was pure dominance. Very good job for Texas for winning the Big Ten championship. Now let's talk about Florida State. Whoo, man. Florida State with a third string quarterback. Tate Wanamaker could not go from the concussion against Florida, so they had to put in Brock Glenn. Brock Glenn went to play and beat Louisville 16-6 to win the ACC championship. He was 8 of 21 for 55 yards. Are you serious? He won a game throwing for only 55 yards. But it gets worse. It gets worse. Trust me. Hold on. But we're going to talk about the rushing. They were able to run the ball effectively with Lawrence Tuavili with 10 carries for 118 yards and a TD. He happened to be the MVP of the ACC championship. Obviously, Quinn Ewers was the Big Ten. Jalen Milroe was the SEC. And I think Michael Penix Jr. No, Dylan Johnson was the champion, the MVP for the Pac-12 championship. So Trey Benson had 18 carries for 67 yards. Receptions, Johnny Wilson, 2 receptions for 21 yards. Keon Coleman only had 4 receptions for 19 yards. And Trey Benson only had 2 receptions for 15 yards. Now, Jack Plummer, are you serious? Are you serious? 14 of 36 for 111 yards and 1 INT. Jahar Johnson, 14 carries for 52 yards. Maurice Turner, 2 carries for 41 yards. And then Jamari Thrash was the leading receiver with 7 receptions for 57 yards and 3 receptions for 21 yards. Now back to Jack Plummer. You were scoring 31 points. It felt like all of these games, and you come against Florida State, and it just felt like you couldn't do anything. I could do better than Jack Plummer. It seemed like they just signed Jack Plummer from the side of the street. And they just told him to put on a Louisville jersey and come out and play for the ACC championship game. And he had so many times to score a touchdown. The block, it was just so many times. The block to get him in the red zone, so many times where they were in the red zone, and Jack Plummer just couldn't convert. He couldn't do it. It was a hard game to watch. Like I said on my Twitter, I wish I had my 3.5 hours back from that game. Because Jack Plummer just literally, he sucked. Jack Plummer sucks. I don't know how he's playing at Louisville, but he completely sucks. The coach, congratulations on him. This was his first season at Louisville. He did a very good job even getting him there. But Jack Plummer just, he was trash on national television. He was trash on national television. We knew that Brock Glenn, him being a freshman, we didn't expect that much. We knew that Florida State was going to try and change the way that they can win the football game, so that way they don't put that much pressure on Brock Glenn. But Jack Plummer, you got to. You had only probably one time where you did good and it didn't even go your way. That throw to the tight end in the end zone, that was probably the only chance that you had of getting a touchdown. Other than that, it literally felt like you just couldn't move the ball up and down the field. The Louisville offense just looked trash in general. The defense was looking good. Blocking the punt, stopping Florida State, trying to stop the run to the best of their ability. Like I said, Lawrence Tuavili had a huge 70-yard run down the field, which ultimately led into a touchdown for Florida State. But other than that, they did pretty good. They did pretty good on Florida State, not causing Keon Coleman to get loose, not causing none of the wide receivers to get loose. And if it wasn't for that huge game, who knows if Florida State would have won the game. Yes, it looks like 16-6, but it was like 3-0. It was literally 3-0, I think, going into the fourth quarter. It was 3-0 going into the fourth quarter. Both of these teams didn't look great. The defense was looking good. Verse from Florida State was looking absolutely good. He will for sure be a first round pick. It is not no questions about that. Now, Florida State, y'all offense just wasn't looking good. It just wasn't looking good. It's very different without Jordan Travis. It is a very different Florida State team versus what we have been seeing this entire season without Jordan Travis. Very different. I feel glad that y'all did go undefeated and win the ACC championship and were resilient against Florida when if Tate Ronemaker doesn't have a few good plays and the defense doesn't step up, y'all could have got boat race. It was 12-0 in the game. It was 12-0 in the game. Y'all could have got boat race. But y'all came back. Y'all were resilient in that game. And in this Louisville ACC championship game, y'all were resilient and y'all won the game. Y'all came in the fourth quarter and y'all were dominant. Y'all were very, 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 very dominant. All the sacks. Brandon Fisk had 3 sacks. Jared Verse had 2 sacks. Patrick Payne had a sack. Fabian Levette had a sack. Like, all of these guys combined, that defense looked phenomenal. That defense just looked phenomenal. Sacks was coming, but Jack Plummer just couldn't throw the ball. Jack Plummer just couldn't do it. He sucked. Jack Plummer sucks. There is no way that he carried this Louisville team, and I know Louisville didn't play nobody, but there's no way that Jack Plummer carried Louisville to the ACC championship. I just don't see it. Jack Plummer sucked. They had so many times to win this game. I'm sorry, Florida State, but they didn't win the game. So we just got to congratulate Florida State for winning the game, winning with their elite defense. That defense is something serious. That offense just wasn't looking good, and obviously with a third-string quarterback, it just wasn't going to look any better. Even with them having a good running game, it just wasn't going to look better. It just wasn't. But congratulations on Florida State for winning the ACC championship game. Now we're going to go to Michigan versus Iowa. Michigan shuts out Iowa 26-0. 26-0. J.J. McCarthy, 22 of 30 for 147 yards. Blake Corum had 16 carries for 52 yards and 2 touchdowns. Donovan Edwards, 4 carries for 28 yards. Their leading receiver was Cornelius Johnson with 9 receptions for 64 yards. Colston Loveland, 3 receptions for 22 yards. And Iowa's quarterback, Deacon Hill, 18 of 32 for 120 yards. LaShawn Williams, 9 carries for 25 yards. Caleb Johnson, 6 carries for 14 yards. And their leading receiver was Addison Ostringa with 6 receptions for 50 yards. Caleb Brown with 5 receptions for 34 yards. And, Nico Reganey had 3 receptions for 25 yards as well. Now, like I said in my last podcast, I didn't think that Michigan was going to necessarily dominate Iowa. I actually thought it was going to be closer than what I thought it was going to be. I thought Iowa was going to actually put some points on the board, but the Iowa offense sucks. Their defense is pretty good. It looks like it was 26-0. It looks like Michigan stomped Iowa. But if it wasn't for the fumble that happened, which resulted in a touchdown, and if it wasn't for the punt return, which got Michigan into the red zone, Michigan really didn't have to do that much. They didn't have to do that much to win the game, but they got the job done. Iowa's offense is not looking good. Iowa has always had one of the best defenses in the nation for years. It's always been like that with Iowa. So I knew that Michigan wasn't going to put that many points on the board. I didn't expect it to be like a 42-0 game or something like that. I most definitely didn't expect Iowa to get shut out. I thought Iowa was going to probably score a touchdown, score 2 touchdowns or something. But Michigan, they really only scored, 12 points, 12, 14 points by themselves going up and down the field. And they had to kick field goals too. They had to kick field goals. So Iowa, they did their job. They had 4 sacks. And they did their job. They did the best that they possibly could against the Michigan Wolverines. But those 2 big plays, it killed them in that offense. It killed them. They need to find George Kittle. They gotta find Hawkinson. They need to get somebody. They need to get a quarterback. They need to get somebody. Now Cam McNamara wasn't playing. He had ended up getting injured. So obviously they had to go with Deacon Hill moving forward in the season, obviously for the Big 12 championship, but the Big 10 championship, should I say. But Iowa just wasn't looking good. Iowa just wasn't looking good on offense. The defense was holding Michigan. They were holding Michigan. They were doing as best as they could. But obviously, when you have a good defense and the offense just isn't good, it's only so much that the defense can do that they're just going to break. And that's exactly what happened for Iowa. Their defense was doing good. They were doing as best as they could. But the offense just wasn't doing anything. So in due time, they just broke. So they just allowed 26 points. But really, they only allowed like 12 points total on them. Like I said, if it wasn't for the fumble and if it wasn't for the huge punt return, the game would have been relatively low. It would have been a low-scoring game. But congratulations on Michigan Wolverines going undefeated, going 13-0, beating Ohio State. That was a very good win, a very needed win for them, and coming in and beating Iowa for the Big Ten championship. Now, this is what y'all have been waiting for. If y'all have stayed tuned for the college football playoffs, they have officially came out. They had came out a couple of hours ago as I'm recording this video. And I posted this on my Twitter. And I really want y'all to see this. This was Saturday night. This Saturday night that I had posted this. And this was after all the games had played. And this was the College Football Committee. This is what they said. This is their goal. So the selection committee task will be to select the best teams, rank the teams for inclusion in the playoffs, and selected other bowl games, and then assign teams to sites. Okay, cool. So now we get to the principles. Now it says the principles. This is very, very, very important. So it says the selection committee will select teams using a process that distinguishes amongst otherwise comparable teams by considering A, conference championship wins, B, strength of schedule, head-to-head competition, comparative outcomes of common opponents without incenting margin of victory. Then, this is the biggest one. Other relevant factors such as unavailability of key players and coaches that may have affected a team's performance during the season or likely will affect its postseason performance. Now, where Florida State ended up winning, they go undefeated. They win the ACC championship. But the committee has to make the decision on, is Florida State still one of the 4 best teams? It's not the 4 most deserving. Do the committee believe that Florida State is one of the 4 best teams in the nation? So, the college football playoffs ended up coming out, and they have Alabama at 4, they have Texas at 3, they have Michigan at 1, and then they have Washington at 2, and then they have Florida State out, and they have Georgia. Since they lost to Alabama, they have Georgia at 6. Now, Michigan, like I said, they're the number 1 team, 13-0. Beat everybody, and they had that key win against Ohio State. You got to put them at number 1. Washington at 2, Texas at 3, Alabama at 4. Washington beat Oregon twice. Oregon was like the 5th ranked team. I think both times, they were like the 5th best team, and then they were like the 6th best team or something across those lines like that. Undefeated, beat them twice. You got to put them in. Now, Texas is very interesting that they put Texas at 3. Now, my hot take, like I said, I feel like Texas is the best team in the country, but since they lost this one game, you got to put them somewhere at 3. But I knew once Alabama beat Georgia, Georgia had to be out. And how the college football playoffs were, there have never been a number 1 team that has made it outside the top 5, the top 6, or the college football playoffs looking inside. That's never happened. A team has never went from 1 to outside of the college football playoffs and now looking in the inside. So either that was going to happen, there was going to be a time where a undefeated team doesn't make it, an undefeated Power 5 school doesn't make it. Those were going to be one of the things that was going to happen. And a championship team not making it. That was going to be the things that was going to happen. So Washington, they beat Oregon twice. You got to put them in. Texas since they beat Alabama. Alabama beat Georgia. Alabama beat that number one team. This is where I said it was going to cause chaos. And this was the committee's worst nightmare if Alabama were to beat Georgia. And that's what happened. Alabama beat Georgia. So the SEC it was a better conference, and they have that win against the number one team. That means something. Them beating the number one team in the nation, that has to mean something. So with that in mind, Texas beat Alabama, so you have to put Texas in 3. And I feel as though, and I really do feel bad for Florida State, but if you're going to put Texas at 3, you have to put Alabama at 4. And you're going to have the Florida State fans that be like, well, we went undefeated. How are we not in the college football playoffs? So, and people be saying, too, that Alabama making that jump from 8 to 4. Well, Texas is making that jump from 7 to 3. So, if you say to yourself that Texas is a better team than Florida State, what makes Alabama not a better team than Florida State? Both of them lost one game. You can say that Florida State is undefeated, okay, but they play Louisville. If Florida State would have beat Louisville 35-6 in a dominating fashion, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation right now. But they had a third-string quarterback. They're not the same with Jordan Travis. They're just not. And they didn't play good against Florida, and they didn't play good against Louisville. Alabama controlled the game of Georgia, controlled the game from pretty much start to finish. So if you're going to sit and tell me that Texas is a better team than you, why are they a better team and they jump from 7 to 3? That's still 4 spots, but you can't put Alabama ahead of Florida State. Y'all cannot sit here with a straight face and tell me that Florida State will beat Alabama. Hell no. It just won't happen. It just won't happen. And to be honest with you, without Jordan Travis, I don't even think that they're finna beat Georgia, because Georgia's at 6 and Florida State's at 5, so they're going to have to play each other, which we will be talking about. You just can't. Texas, if they're in, Alabama has to be in. And I got all of them except for the Oregon one, where I felt as though whoever won the Pac-12 championship will be in the college football playoffs. I felt like if Michigan won, that they were in. If Alabama or Georgia won, they would have been in. And Texas would have been in. I really felt as though Texas would have been in. So I got the Michigan, Texas, Alabama. I just didn't get Oregon. But I really do feel bad. I really do feel bad for Florida State. People be saying, well, if that's the case and you go undefeated, it doesn't really matter. And I want y'all to see this stat too. If we compare resumes, if we compare the strength of schedule for Alabama, Georgia, and Florida State, because we all agreed, the committee agreed that Texas was the third best team. So we were just trying to figure out who the fourth best team in the nation was. So if we just look at the strength of schedules, Alabama has the 5th strength of schedule, Georgia has the 37th strength of schedule, and Florida State has the 55th strength of schedule. Even with them becoming undefeated, even with them winning each and every one of those games, it's not an SEC thing, it's not a money views thing, it's the strength of schedule. And the key wins Alabama had was against Georgia and Missouri. And you also have 5 of the top 15 SEC schools you have in the nation. You had that. So Georgia had Mississippi, Ole Miss, and Mizzou, and Florida State had LSU and Louisville. LSU and Louisville is not going to compare to Georgia and Ole Miss. It's just not going to compare. Yes, I feel bad. I genuinely feel bad for Florida State. I do. But you can't just say, well, since they went 13-0, that they should be in. If that's the case, why is Liberty not in? Yes, they went 13-0, and people are going to say, well, let them play. Well, Liberty just went 13-0. Are you going to let them play against Alabama? Are you going to let them play against Florida State? Are you going to let them play against Georgia, Texas? They're going to get boat raced. They're going to get blitzed. You can't sit with a straight face. I don't care if Florida State has a excellent defense. They do. They just don't have the offense to come and beat a team like a Alabama or a Texas or a Michigan or a Washington. They just don't have it. They don't have it. And the committee had to make that decision because in a month, January 1st, when these games are played, obviously Florida State is going to have Tate Rodemaker back. They're not going to have Jordan Travis back. They're still going to have their second string quarterback, Tate Rodemaker. They're not going to have Brock Glenn. So the committee had to make the decision on when he comes back, do they believe that Florida State can compete and be the fourth best team? And the answer is no. The answer is no. You just can't. You can't put them in. And I feel bad. I feel bad for them. Yes, I had a very good season, 13-0. I feel 100% bad for them. I see where y'all are coming from. But the reality of the situation is Alabama beat Georgia. Alabama beat the number one team. They've been a number one team basically each and every one of those weeks, especially when the the SEC championship came. You have to put them in. Win and you're in. The only time there was a number one was when Michigan beat Ohio State. But other than that, they were beating every team, and they were number one week in and week out. That means more. It just does. And the key wins versus top 25 opponents, Alabama has 4, Florida State has 3. So I felt as though you can't put Texas in without putting Alabama in. You just couldn't. Because what you're sitting here and telling me, especially if you put Texas at 3, if you put Texas at 3, then you for sure can't put Alabama. You can't put Florida State in. You have to put Alabama in because of the simple fact you have Texas at 3. What makes Texas better than Florida State? That doesn't make Alabama better than Florida State. You have to question that. If you would have had Florida State at 3 and then Texas at 4, it still would not have made sense to me. But that's the committee saying that they're the third best team. And do you truly believe that they're a better team than Texas? No, they're not a better team than Texas. Do you truly think that they're a better team than Alabama? No. So if you're going to put Texas at 3, you have to put Alabama at 4. They both have to go in. Either both can go in, neither could go in, or Texas can be at 4. You can't put Florida State at 4 just because they went undefeated. A team can go undefeated, like I said, like Liberty, and we're not going to put them in at the top because of the simple fact we know that they wouldn't make it. It's about the 4 best teams, not the 4 most deserving, the 4 best teams. And I feel like the committee got it right this year. Last year, they got it wrong, putting TCU, a 1-loss TCU who didn't even win their conference championship over a 2-loss Alabama, which we know Alabama was a better team. And they only lost 2 games by like a margin of 3 points total or something like that. So I feel like this year they got the 4 best teams. They got Alabama, they got Texas, they got Washington, and they got Michigan. So, but if I had to personally put the best team, do I feel like Michigan is a better team than Texas? I don't think so. If I had to rank the best teams out of the top 4, I would have Texas at number 1. I would have Alabama at 2. I would have Michigan at 3, and I would have Washington at 4. I honestly feel like Washington and Michigan can mess around and be interchangeable. But I feel like Texas, how they dominated Oklahoma State, how they came, especially when Quinn Ewers went down, how they responded, how they dominated every one of these teams. I feel like that's what make Texas the best team in the nation. They're deep in the running back department. They're deep in the wide receiver department, especially if they get Xavier Worthy for this game against Washington. They're very deep. And Steve Sarkisian, the second year, made it to the playoffs. They're a very dangerous team. So I personally believe that Texas is the best team in the nation. That's my hot take. Even though nobody said it, and I would even make a better case too. I honestly feel like Washington should have been number 1. I feel like with that win over Oregon, I feel like Washington could mess around and be a better team than Michigan. I honestly feel like Michigan isn't a better team than Washington. That's my hot take. So let's talk about these New Year's 6 games. Let's talk about each and every one of these New Year's 6 games. So we got Washington and Texas. That's in the Sugar Bowl. That's going to be in New Orleans, January 1st. Let's talk about this game. Both of these games, let's keep this in mind. Both of these games are going to be very good. These are going to be very good games, very entertaining games. I feel like this is going to be the better game out of the college football playoffs. So with this in mind, I wouldn't be shocked if Washington wins. And I told y'all earlier in the podcast that Washington is deep. Washington is deep in the wide receiver department. They're very deep with Rome to Doomsday. Jalen McMillan, Jalen Lynn, they're deep. They're deep. And then they have Dylan Johnson. If Dylan Johnson can run for 5.4 yards like he did against Oregon, they can mess around and win. They can mess around and beat Texas. Michael Penix Jr. is the right quarterback that can beat a team like Texas. They can move the ball down the field. They have deep threats everywhere. This isn't going to be just like a blowout. I don't believe that this is going to be a blowout game. I honestly believe that this is going to be a shootout. I feel like this is going to be a high 30s, low 40s type game. This is going to be a shootout. I don't believe that Texas is just going to beat the brakes off of them. And I honestly don't think, after what I just seen Washington do to Oregon, I don't think that they're going to beat the brakes off of Texas, because they can't stop nobody. But Texas can stop teams, but they can allow points too. They allowed 21 points to Oklahoma State. So with that in mind, this is going to be a shootout. This is a tough game to pick. I wouldn't be shocked if Washington comes out with the W because of how deep they are in the wide receivers. And I feel like Michael Penix Jr. will make that play that can seal the victory for Washington. I really do. But I'm going to choose Texas. I'm going to choose Texas to win the game. I believe that they're the best team in the nation. I feel like the wide receiver core, especially if Xavier Worthy comes back, they're going to be good. With Xavier Worthy, A.D. Mitchell, they're going to be very, very good. Baxter and the running backs, they're going to be very, very, very good. Quinn Ewers is going to have him a game. Both quarterbacks are going to have themselves a game. So that's going to be a very good game to see. And plus, another thing that people are probably going to be talking about too is that it's the Sugar Bowl is in Texas. I mean, not in Texas, in New Orleans. Texas has their home field. Basically, it's a whole state over. It's literally home field for Texas. So I honestly have Texas winning. I'll probably say 38-35, or I will probably say like 44-41, something like that. It's going to be a shootout. Both teams are going to go back and forth. It's going to be a very offensive game. It's going to be very, very, very good game. But I have Texas beating Washington. Let me know what y'all think. We're going to move to the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, California, where number 1 Michigan versus number 4 Alabama is going to play at. Now, I want y'all to see this video. I want to see if I can find it. Hold on. Let me find this video for y'all. Cause this video it just basically shows it all. I want y'all to just look at this video. So you just look at the video. Michigan doesn't even want to play Alabama. They're not ready for the Roll Tide. Matter of fact, boy, let me take off this shirt so that way y'all see this. So y'all see this. They're not ready for Alabama. They are not ready for Roll Tide. They're not ready for St. Nick to come in there and blitz them. They're going to get absolutely blitzed. They're going to get blown out. They're not ready. I feel like Michigan is flawed. They can be beat. And Alabama is going to come in. They have not seen a Jalen Milroe in the Big Ten Conference. They have not seen anything like that. So they are not going to be prepared to beat Alabama. Alabama, I feel like Jalen Milroe has found his favorite receiver in Isaiah Bond. They're not ready to beat. Michigan's not ready to beat Alabama. They're just not. They're just not. And based off their reactions, this is a team thing. This is a culture thing, what y'all just saw. Really, you're supposed to be ready to play everybody. It don't matter who y'all play. You saw what Washington did. Washington wasn't really even up when the whole watch party came. They were just ready. Who's next? You got to have that mentality. Michigan doesn't have that mentality. They want to play the Florida State team because they know that Florida State, they can beat them because they don't have no quarterback. But now since they're playing Alabama and they're typically not good with SEC teams, with Alabama and Georgia, they done lost to Georgia. So it's like they're not ready. J.J. McCarthy, I don't think he's truly ready. Yes, he said that they will be back, but I don't think he's ready. Blake Corum, I feel like Nick Saban will try and find a way to stop him because if they stop him, then it's going to be very hard for Michigan to win. The Michigan wide receivers, the only way that Michigan can win is their wide receivers with Cornelius Johnson, with Roman Wilson, with Loveland. They got to beat them throwing the football. J.J. McCarthy has to beat them throwing the football. And J.J. McCarthy does have to run. He does have to run because Nick Saban typically isn't that good against running quarterbacks. So if J.J. McCarthy can get out, go outside the pocket and make throws while, doing scrambling and trying to, make the first downs and stuff like that, maybe they can have a chance to win. But I honestly believe that they're not going to win. They're not going to win. I feel like they're going to get blown out. I feel like it's going to be Alabama versus Texas in the championship here in H-Town, here in Houston, Texas. And we're going to talk about that. The rematch of Week 2. Both teams have got better. Alabama has got better since that loss to Texas in Week 2. Texas has got better ever since the loss to Oklahoma. They've both got better. Quinn Ewers has got better. The defense has gotten better. The offense of Texas has gotten better. Same with Alabama. If you would have told me that Alabama would make it to the college football playoffs after barely beating South Florida, I would have thought you were crazy. I would have thought you were crazy. I would have thought that you were crazy. But they have improved week in, week out. They have got hot. They have beat the best team in the nation. And now they're going up against a team that Texas has beat. They're going up against a team that beat them. They're going up against them. So with that in mind, Texas, they know how to beat Alabama, but now I feel like Alabama, they know how to beat Texas. Jalen Milroe was a raw quarterback against Texas. He hasn't really went up against anything like that. Just like I feel as though if Georgia would have played Alabama earlier in the season, I feel like Jalen Milroe probably would not have beat him. But now I feel like Jalen Milroe can beat a team like Texas now. I really do. And that's not even me being biased. I've seen both teams play. I've seen both teams play week in and week out. Both teams look phenomenal. It's literally going to be the two best teams. Texas is the best team in my personal opinion versus Alabama. I feel like that they're the second best team. I really do. It's going to be a very good game. But I honestly believe that even though this is a rebuild year for St. Nick, for Nick Saban, I honestly believe that Alabama will win the championship. I wouldn't be mad if Texas won. I wouldn't be mad. It will be good for the city of Houston. It will be good for the state of Texas. But I honestly feel like Alabama, Nick Saban's going to have something. If you can stop somebody like Xavier Worthy and beat the deep ball threat, which I feel like Alabama can. They did it a little bit against Georgia because they got better as the season went along. They can beat Texas. They can beat Texas. Even though Texas, they can push the ball. Alabama, I feel like they can win. Alabama, I feel like they can win, and I feel like Alabama will win the national championship. Roll Tide. So let's talk about all the other New Year's Six Bowl games. We got Oregon, number 8. Oregon dropping all the way down the 8, by the way. They're going up against number 23, Liberty. How about Liberty and New Mexico State? That was a very good game. If y'all ended up seeing that game, that was a very good game. Very high-scoring game, but it was a very good game. Would I have put them in over SMU, who had beat Tulane? I honestly, that's hard. That's hard, but I feel like I will. I feel like I would do that. I'll put Liberty over SMU, even though that's tough. Even though they beat a Tulane team, you just gotta put Liberty. There was a one slot difference. It was Liberty at 23, and then they had SMU at 24. But Liberty ended up getting the edge and playing in the New Year's Six Bowl. They're gonna get blitzed by Oregon though, especially if Bo Nix plays. If Bo Nix plays, they're going to get absolutely creamed. They're gonna get creamed. That quarterback by Liberty is a dog. He is a dog. But I feel like Oregon is going to be too much for them. They haven't played a Power 5 school all season, so I feel as though Liberty will be getting blitzed by Oregon. Now let's go to Florida State and Oregon in the Orange Bowl in Miami. Both teams are going to be pissed. Both teams are going to be playing mad. They're both going to feel as though they should have been in the college football playoffs. So both of them are going to have a little chip on their shoulder. They're going to try and show the committee, even though they can't make it now, they're going to try and show them, hey, we should have been in the college football playoffs. Georgia, even with them losing to Alabama, Florida State, with them going undefeated and not making it. Both teams are going to be colliding head to head. They're going to be mad from beginning to end. I honestly feel like Georgia is going to win, though. Especially if Tate Ronda-Maker plays or Brock Glenn, because we know Jordan Travis is not going to be playing. Georgia's going to blitz them. They're going to blitz them. I honestly think that Georgia's going to blitz them. But if Carson Beck does throw interceptions in the Florida State game, because Florida State's defense is elite, I wouldn't be surprised if Florida State does make it interesting. But I feel like Georgia will be winning that game. Penn State versus Ole Miss in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. I honestly feel like Penn State will win. I don't think Ole Miss, even though they're the 11th ranked team, it doesn't really feel as though they're the 11th ranked team. I feel like Penn State with the quarterback, even though the quarterback isn't really that good, I feel like he will propel them to win the game. Now, Ohio State and Missouri, both teams very good. Shout out to Missouri having a very, very good season. No one really thought that Missouri was going to have this great of a season, being the number 9 ranked team, losing to Georgia. That was very heartbroken. But going up against Ohio State, Marvin Harrison is going to be very interesting if he does play. If he doesn't play, I honestly think Missouri might mess around and win this game. Do I want to choose them, though? That's very, 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 very tough. That's hard. If Marvin Harrison doesn't play, then maybe they have a chance. But I think I'm gonna go with Ohio State. I think I might go. I think I might go with Ohio State. I think I'm gonna go with Ohio State. So let me know what y'all think about the college football rankings. Like I said, it's very, very, very sad that Florida State is out. Very sad that they're out, but they're not better than Alabama. I'm sorry. They're not better than Texas. If you put Texas in at 3, you got to put Alabama in at 4. You just have to. Maybe if Florida State was at 3, maybe it would have been different. It would have certainly been different if Jordan Travis was playing, because if he was playing, this would not have even been a question, and I wouldn't even be mad. But if you're going to put Texas at 3 and they have 1 loss, you got to put another 1-loss team in, and that's Alabama. You just have to. If you can say to yourself that Texas is a better team than Florida State, what makes Alabama not a better team than Florida State? You can say everything you want about the record, but you're putting a team with 1 loss at number 3. It doesn't make sense. Y'all can't say that. Y'all can't say nothing about the views. Let me know what y'all think. Let me know, do y'all believe that the committee got it right? Like I said, I got all of my predictions right except for Oregon beating Washington. Washington ended up coming back and winning. So yeah, both of these games are going to be very good. Like I said, I have Texas and Alabama, and I have Alabama beating Texas. And like I said, my hot take, I feel like Texas is the best team in the nation. They're just good from top to bottom. I feel like they're the best team in the nation. So let me know what y'all think. Let me know what y'all predictions are going to be for all of the bowl games, the New Year's Six bowl games. And yeah, with that in mind, that is the end of this podcast episode. Please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you get the latest updates on when I post a Real Spill Wednesday or full podcast episode. I love each and every one of y'all. I'm sorry, if Alabama would not have made it, I would have lost it. if they didn't make it, I would have lost it. Y'all would have saw me on this podcast, me losing it, but they didn't. They end up making it to the college football playoffs. I'm really happy, and I feel like the committee got it right. So with that in mind, I love y'all, and y'all have a nice rest of y'all day.